The FIA banned traction control in 1994. Every team confirmed they had switched it off. Nobody switched it off. That is not an accusation. It is, in the assessment of the engineers who lived through it, approximately what happened in the years between the 1994 ban and the 2001 re-legalization of driver aids. The ban was real, the compliance was contested, and the grey area between a banned system and a legal engine management program that happened to produce identical effects on wheel spin was wide enough that 6 seasons of Formula One engineering lived inside it. This is the story of how traction control left Formula One in 1994, never really left, and came back officially in 2001 with a regulatory framework that acknowledged, without quite saying so, that the previous 7 years had been a polite fiction. It is the story of what happens when a regulation bans a function rather than a mechanism, and what engineers do when they discover that the function can be reproduced by mechanisms the regulation does not mention. Stay with this, because the technical detail at the center of this story is small enough to fit in a paragraph of engine management code, and the competitive consequence of that detail decided championships. The traction control ban of 1994 was part of a broader driver aids prohibition that removed active suspension, ABS and semi-automatic gear mapping from Formula One simultaneously. The stated purpose was to return the driver to the center of the performance equation, to make skill, rather than software, the decisive variable in who was fastest through a corner. The FIA's view was that electronic systems had created a generation of cars that were effectively managing their own performance, and that this was incompatible with the sporting principle that Formula One drivers should be the best racing drivers in the world, competing on equal mechanical terms. The mechanism of traction control that was banned was specific, a system that detected wheel spin at the driven wheels by comparing wheel speed sensors, and then intervened by cutting ignition, reducing throttle, or adjusting fuel injection to restore traction. This definition was necessary because you cannot ban a physical effect. You can only ban the mechanism that produces it. The FIA banned the mechanism. What they could not do was ban the effect of careful engine mapping. Engine mapping, the program that defines how a turbocharged or normally aspirated engine delivers its power across the rev range, across different throttle positions, across different temperatures, had been a standard part of Formula One engine management since the mid-1980s. A well-mapped engine delivered power smoothly and predictably. A poorly mapped engine delivered it in surges that were difficult to manage, particularly at corner exits where wheel spin was most likely. The FIA's ban on traction control said nothing about engine mapping. It could not. Engine mapping was not a driver aid. It was how an engine was tuned. What certain teams discovered in 1994 and developed through the following seasons was that engine mapping could be designed to produce an effect that was, from the driver's perspective and from the car's behavior, indistinguishable from the banned traction control system. Not by detecting wheel spin, the banned mechanism, but by preemptively shaping the power delivery curve in a way that made wheel spin less likely to occur in the first place. The engine did not react to wheel spin. It was tuned to avoid the conditions in which wheel spin would naturally occur. The technical mechanism was a 3-dimensional map, a table of values defining engine output across combinations of throttle position, engine speed, and gear selection. A conventional map optimized this table for power. A sophisticated map optimized it for something more subtle, the rate of change of power delivery at each throttle position and engine speed combination. If you increased power gradually enough at the throttle positions where wheel spin was most likely, at corner exits in lower gears, the tire could absorb the torque without losing grip. The effect was identical to traction control. The mechanism was legally a calibration choice. The FIA was aware of this. The question they faced, the question that the stewards and technical delegates debated through the mid to late 1990s, was whether a map that prevented wheel spin was functionally equivalent to a system that corrected wheel spin, and whether functional equivalence was the same as regulatory violation. The answer, after several inconclusive technical investigations, was that it was not. A map was a map. A traction control system was a system that responded to a sensor input. They were different things, even if they produced similar outcomes. The investigation into the Benetton B194's software in 1994 had found a program, option 13, that Benetton said was not accessible during racing. Whether it was used or not was never definitively established. But the investigation had revealed something else. The source code of a competitive Formula One engine management system was complex enough that distinguishing between a legal mapping optimization and an illegal driver aid was, in practice, extremely difficult. Teams understood this. The FIA understood this. The grey area persisted. This distinction was technically defensible. It was also, in the assessment of teams who could not afford the engine mapping sophistication of the frontrunners, a competitive advantage that the regulation had failed to close. Michael Schumacher won the 1994 championship in the Benetton B194, a car whose engine management had been the subject of a software investigation that found hidden code. Schumacher won the 1995 championship in the same car, developed. He then moved to Ferrari, where the Scuderia's engine management program became, over the following seasons, one of the most sophisticated in the paddock. The correlation between sophisticated engine mapping and competitive results was not coincidental. The FIA's response, the response that showed they understood the problem, was the introduction of a standard electronic control unit for 2008, a single ECU supplied to all teams by a single manufacturer, running software that every team had equal access to. Not the re-legalization of traction control precisely, but the elimination of the advantage that proprietary engine mapping had provided. If every team ran the same ECU with the same software architecture, the grey area between legal mapping and illegal traction control would close. It closed. Between 2001, when traction control was officially re-legalized, and 2008, when it was banned again as part of a wider driver aids prohibition, Formula One produced some of the most technically sophisticated driver aid systems the sport has seen. Teams no longer needed to hide the function inside engine mapping. They could build dedicated systems, tune them openly, and optimize them race by race. The 2001 to 2008 era of traction control was visible, measurable, and legal. The systems teams developed in this period were remarkable in their precision. Traction control in its legal form used wheel speed sensors to detect the onset of wheel spin, typically defined as a differential of more than a specified percentage between front and rear wheel speeds, and intervened within milliseconds to restore traction. The intervention could be a spark cut, a fuel cut, a throttle reduction, or a combination of all three. The best systems of the mid-2000s could manage wheel spin so smoothly that drivers could apply full throttle at corner exits where, without electronic assistance, even the finest drivers in the world would have needed to modulate carefully. The lap times that resulted were, on circuits with multiple slow corners, several tenths per lap faster than equivalent cars in the traction control-free years that preceded and followed. What this revealed by comparison was how effective the hidden version had been. Engineers who worked through both periods described the explicitly legal traction control systems of the mid-2000s as more refined, but not categorically more capable than the best engine mapping of the late 1990s. The mechanism was different, the effect was not. The story of traction control in Formula One is the story of what a regulation can and cannot do. It can prohibit a mechanism, it cannot prohibit a function, and in engineering, function is what matters. The function of traction control, managing wheel spin at corner exits to convert engine power into forward motion as efficiently as possible, was never absent from Formula One after 1994. It was present in every session, in every race, in the engine management code of every team that could afford to write it. The FIA banned it. The engineers found it again. They always do. If you found this useful, subscribe. There are more stories like this one in the archive, and more coming. Leave a comment below. Which grey area should we examine next? The flex wings that were legal in the garage and illegal at speed, or the mass damper that Renault ran for 2 seasons before anyone understood what it was?